Hi, and welcome to this presentation about the sign and graphics market in 2022. Today, we're going to be discussing a little bit of what's going on in the economy and also what trends are driving all of the things that we're seeing within this market. So I'm Denise Gustavson. I'm the editor-in-chief and also the editorial director with Wide Format Impressions and NAPCO Media. And with me, I have Andy Paparozzi. He's the chief economist for Printing United Alliance. Andy, welcome and pleased to have you with me today.
My pleasure, Denise. Thank you for having me.
So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Andy, and we can start looking at what the outlook is for 2022 for the sign and graphics market.
Great, Denise. Thank you so much. And let's get right into the outlook. Here's what we expect in 2022. Growth continues for the graphic and sign market and for our printing industry overall, but we expect the pace of growth to slow noticeably after mid-year as the American economy slows. Supply shortages and labor shortages continue, and so do the cost inflation and production disruptions and all the other problems they create. Resistance to price increases stiffens as our clients try to protect their margins from inflation that we all now know is not transitory, but is persistent and embedded. And across our industry, graphic and signs and across industry, the gamut of opportunity will continue to increase, but the margin for error will continue to shrink. So that means we have to do three things. Number one, we must count more on productivity gains, efficiency gains, and less on cost pass-through to protect our margins. Number two, we must be vigilant. As I will show you shortly, several key leading economic indicators of where the American economy is likely headed are troublesome. And we have to be aggressive because in times of extraordinary uncertainty, the tendency is to wait for clarity, but the opportunity is to create clarity. Our source, next slide, please, Denise. Our source will be the 2022 first quarter State of the Industry Survey, which we are conducting right now. 220 companies from across our industry have participated to date. They are a diverse group with annual sales ranging between $250,000 to more than $250 million. And 70% have diversified beyond their primary segment, participating in printing industry Convergence, which Denise will tell us all about. Full results of the survey will be published in March. Printing United Alliance members can download the full report at our website. And I'd be remiss not to thank Konica Minolta for generously sponsoring the State of the Industry program. Next slide, please, Denise. And I think of all the data we collected, one set of numbers explains what's happening across our industry. The blue bar, 64.8% of your peers expect their sales to grow during the first half of 2022, quite robustly on average, by 13.8% on average. But the black bar, just 37.6% expect to increase pre-tax profitability. And our next slide shows why. We asked your peers what they expect their biggest concerns to be this year. Now take a look at these numbers. 92.4% material shortages, 85% rising substrate costs, not just paper, but vinyl and textiles and everything else. 72% rising labor costs, 71% rising transportation costs, labor shortages, all the way down at the bottom. 35% are now concerned about maintaining healthy cash flow, and 40% are now concerned about losing clients to print alternatives. And I want you to know how significant these numbers are. we build very diverse groups of participants in our research. Different opinions, different experiences, even different ways of approaching business. And to get them to agree on anything is rare. And to see these kinds of numbers, 70, 80, 90% agreeing on the significance of these trends is really unheard of. I've only seen it twice in all the years I've been doing this, and it captures the margin squeeze that is occurring across our industry and is the single most significant trend industry-wide. Next slide, please, Denise. And again, none of this should be surprising because COVID-19 caused unprecedented damage to global supply chains. If supply had been able to quickly catch up with demand, inflation would indeed have been transitory, like we were told it was going to be. But supply didn't quickly catch up to demand. And quite frankly, we were fooling ourselves given the depth and extent of disruption to supply chains to think that it ever would. So instead of being transitory, inflation embedded itself in the economy by raising sticky prices such as wages and rents, and of course, energy prices, which have been rising dramatically, affect every industry and household. Next slide, please. Now, here's the problem. The problem with persistent embedded inflation is that it slows the economy by eroding real purchasing power and consumer confidence. During the 3 months ending in January, the most recent data, 3 months ending just last month, the blue line, hourly wages of private sector employees rose 5.3%. That's very good. You want that blue line rising. You don't grow an economy by impoverishing people. The problem is, although hourly wages rose 5.3%, consumer prices, as measured by the Consumer Price Index, the black line, rose 7.2%. And the longer that black line is above that blue line, the less promising the economy's prospects. And our next slide shows another troubling number. Consumer confidence has fallen sharply. The University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index, believe it or not, has fallen 19.7% since this time last year. One of the biggest declines on record, and in fact is now at its lowest level since 2011, when we were struggling to come out of the great financial recession. And I will quote the gentleman, Dr. Richard Curtin, who runs this entire program at the University of Michigan. The recent declines in consumer sentiment have been driven by weakening personal financial prospects, largely due to rising inflation. What did I say? Rising inflation faster than wages, eroding real purchasing power, less confidence in the government's ability to do anything about inflation, and the least favorable long-term economic outlook in a decade. Our next slide shows that right now, the consensus of economists surveyed monthly by the Wall Street Journal expects the American economy to grow by 3.3% this year. No recession, but a noticeable slowing in the economy's growth from 5.7% last year to 3.3% this year, with what the black bars show, growth peaking at 3.8% next quarter and then slowing to 2.8% by year end. And quite frankly, I would expect that if these forecasts are going to be revised, they're much more likely to be revised downward than they are to be revised upward. So what does that mean for our industry? Next slide, please, Denise. And again, let's be realistic about this. We are in a period of extraordinary uncertainty. Our Our view is obstructed by uncertainty by a number of things, including number one, how far the Fed is really willing to go to loosen inflation's grip on the economy. How much factors ranging from truck driver shortages to China's zero tolerance policy for COVID will delay the mending of global supply chains, and of course, the tensions in Ukraine. What if Putin does invade? And what if oil prices go to $125, $150 a barrel? What do you think that'll mean for the American economy? But given what we know today, and that's all we can really base our forecasts on, given what we know today, our forecast is, as I said earlier, our industry will continue to grow this year. We expect growth somewhere in the 3.9 to 4.5% range, with growth slowing as the year progresses from the 5.5% during the current quarter to more like 2 to 2.5% by year end. Again, as the economy slows for the reasons I outlined. Next slide, please. So the question always is, what do we do about all of this? And we always stress in our reports that, listen, all of what we talked about is helpful. It's good to know. Knowing what's happening and what's likely ahead and why is very helpful. But knowing how to make what's happening and what's likely ahead an opportunity rather than a threat is the difference maker, is the game changer. So what are we going to do? Number one, first, as I said earlier, we are going to count on productivity gains, consistent productivity and efficiency gains, not cost pass-through, to protect margins this year. Last year, when we were told inflation was transitory, clients generally accepted price increases. When you think something is transitory, you wait it out. We all know that inflation is embedded and persistent, not transitory. So we should expect resistance to price increases to stiffen as clients try to protect their own margins from persistent inflation. Consistent productivity gains. That means consistent productivity gains will be essential to protecting and expanding margins in 2022, to growing profitably in 2022, and capital investment is essential to consistent productivity gains with peers about their capital investment objectives for 2022. What do they most want to achieve? And the table on the right summarizes their responses. By far and away, number one, we must get more productive and more efficient, and that is spot on. That's exactly what we have to focus on. Increase production speed, get faster, decrease turn times, replace or upgrade aging equipment and software, which obviously boosts productivity. Expansion into new markets, diversification, which Denise is going to talk to us about, and automate operations. In contrast, if you looked at the very bottom of the table, just 17.9% are investing to compete more effectively on price. Next slide, please. And the second thing we need to realize is that there is plenty of opportunity in our industry. May not be in the same old places or by doing the same old things, but our problem is not a lack of opportunity. There's historic opportunity in our industry. We asked your peers which products they expect to grow over the next year or two. And I summarized the most frequently cited products on this slide. And what strikes me is the diversity of opportunity, the diversity of products that have growth potential. wall architectural building graphics, point of purchase and retail displays, vehicle graphics and wraps, compliance safety signages, window graphics, fleet graphics. It goes on and on. So I'm going to turn it over to Denise now, because she's going to talk to us in greater detail about opportunity in this industry and about the drivers of growth.
Thanks, Andy, for setting this up so nicely. And I'm going to stay on the slide for a little bit because, as you look at all of the options and the different applications that we have available to us, we're looking at some across every single industry, from packaging to apparel to signing graphics. But if you notice, a lot of these are specifically diversification within your own market in many cases. So within the signing graphics market. But how can we be sure that these are the applications that are going to be driving us to look ahead to see that we're going to get growth? Now, there's a couple of different things that are driving this growth and in those markets specifically. We've already talked a little bit. We have convergence and we have diversification. Diversification within different segments of printing and also diversification within the sign and graphics market itself. Now we're also looking at privacy concerns. How's privacy concerns impacting wide format graphics? I'll let you know. Increasing travel is also impacting the opportunity that it's available for this industry. Safety concerns, overcoming embedded COVID behaviors, also sustainability and personalization and customization. All of these are different trends and they all impact different markets. So we're looking a little bit about diversification. And so this is from our Convergence study, which Andy can also talk more about later. It's also available on the printing.org website for members. It's free to download. But one of the things that I wanted to note here is that 80% of PSPs, so print service providers, are entering or considering entering a print segment other than their own. So if you're in signing graphics, you might be looking at apparel. You might be looking at packaging. You might be looking at some specific commercial graphic applications as well, because there are still opportunities if you research them effectively and if you know exactly what your market needs. But interestingly enough, it's not like people are moving into just one market. No, 51% are moving into 3 or more segments. People are not looking at just one way to increase revenue or increase profits and grow their business. They're looking for every single possible opportunity that exists. So you can see some of the areas. Graphic and sign is at the top. Functional printing, which is very, very specialized, is at the bottom because that's a very, very specialized application, but it's still very important. But it's interesting to see, again, the Convergence study goes into a lot more detail about how exactly all of these markets are now converging together and really providing an interesting view of what the industry will become in the years to come. Now, privacy concerns. You might be wondering, well, how exactly does privacy impact me? I'm a graphics producer. I don't care about privacy. But when you look at the industry as a whole, users, so you and me as consumers, we are demanding more privacy, including greater transparency, choice, and control over how your data is used. You can understand that with all the hacking that's going on, ransomware attacks. Every other day there's a breach on some database and you worry, is my identity going to be stolen? What's going to happen? How are people using my information that I've now provided to them on the web or an email, some kind of digital format? So we've seen some changes in the landscape, and we've seen the introduction of iOS 14 for Apple, which now, instead of being an opt-out model, it's now opt-in. Consumers have to agree to be tracked online. So that means fewer people are saying, yes, track me. And there's fewer people that are allowing brands to target them for advertising. Privacy sandbox. That's something with Google Chrome, and it's something that they're phasing out third-party cookies on Chrome browsers in 2022. And actually, this morning I read that it's now being rolled out into Android phones and the Android OS as of today. They are starting to roll that out. So now there's no way to track people on an Android device as to what they're doing, where they're going, what they're viewing online. Brands cannot track or target advertising. And interesting, the Harris poll from November 2021, which was done in cooperation with the Outdoor Advertising Industry of America, so OAAA, 74% of people are concerned about online data privacy and use of personal information and behavior for online ad targeting. And 60% frequently skip online ads due to digital device burnout. 39% are trying to spend less time on their phones and computers, and they're reducing TV viewing. So now where do brands go in order to reach those consumers? This is when print, and especially wide format graphics, comes in and really offers a really prime opportunity, because brands need a way that people can't swipe, can't ignore, can't turn off, can't change the channel. They need a way to be able to reach people that somebody can't block. And it needs to be privacy compliant, and it has to be safe. So how do we do this? We need to reach people where they are. So outdoor advertising, or OOH, is becoming much more relevant today. And we've already started to see increases in that, especially in these markets: wall and architectural building graphics, vehicle graphics and wraps, window graphics, fleet and transit graphics. All of these areas are things that people can't turn off. They're, granted, it might be on a billboard that you're traveling by at 60 miles an hour on the highway, but you've seen it. It might just be a flash, but you've seen it, you've acknowledged it, and it's that's there, that information is there. And we see the same Harris poll brought out that most people have engaged with this out-of-home advertising. 57% have engaged by visiting a website. They search for more information. They make a physical purchase. And even in urban areas, 77% of consumers have engaged with one of these ads. So we see this is a really huge opportunity to be able to put the customers that you work with, the brands that you work with, in front of consumers. And this is, again, something that they can't turn off. So we're moving into travel. Again, this is all based on the go where the people are thought. So people are commuting more. We see that through the same study from Harris poll, that more people are now starting to commute, either part-time or full-time. Those numbers are starting to increase. People are starting to get out of their house again as COVID restrictions are lifting, and we see some glimmer of hope that we have some benefits in regards to the pandemic. People are eager to get out of their homes. And so this is happening. So we see, workplaces are starting to fill up again. People are on the roads. So now they are available to actually see all that out-of-home signage. And again, it's something that they can't turn off. Travel also for vacation. A lot of people have not been looking at or planning vacations, but now the consumer outlook is strong. 72% of Americans plan to travel in the first half of 2022. This could be, in some cases, the first time they may have been traveling for 2 years. So again, they are out in the market, they are out in public, and there are various opportunities in this regard to how we can address them. Posters, banners, building wraps, all of that. Even if you're looking at airplane travel, you have you could do the seat backs of an airplane. All of that is opportunity as people now take to travel and increasing their travel. Another thing is, as people are going out and about doing their daily lives, they're also going into stores more. Consumers will most often visit grocery, retail stores, restaurants, and pharmacies in 2022. So again, looking at it, what do we have available to us? We have signage outside. We have store signage inside, retail and POP displays, end caps, various promotions inside. You have also compliance and safety signage, because we are still worried about COVID. So there's still a need to be able to share whatever the local guidelines are about mask mandates, if the mask is required, if we still need to keep distance, if there's anything going on, all that information needs to still be available. And this helps, especially on the safety signage, it helps people as they're moving back into public situations, because it gives them a sense of safety, a sense of, oh, I understand what the guidelines are, so that way they know how to conduct themselves in certain public spaces. So again, this is all trending upward. And again, we can't turn off, signage. So this is a perfect opportunity to continue to grow our businesses. Again, we're talking about COVID. People, as we said, are still looking at safety. They're still concerned about breakthrough cases, as opposed to this Harris poll tracker wave, which was done in October. So it's still a concern. Again, compliance and safety signage. It's a huge, huge area that I know we saw grow during the pandemic, but it's still equally as important now. As people, as customers, even as employees are moving back into these public spaces, we need to adjust our behaviors. So signage and wayfinding graphics, when they're implemented very thoughtfully, encourage people, exactly how to interact with the world in which they now how we find each other now. So again, we're talking about COVID behaviors. So there's been a lot of things that we have learned over the last 2 years. Stay inside, avoid people, wash your hands, all of those things have kind of been drilled into our heads over the last 2 years. And that also means that, and we've noticed that more people are doing online shopping. The rates of online shopping have gone through the roof in the last 2 years, just because nobody wanted to be exposed. So it's easier to have the goods and come to us. That means fewer mall or retail visits as well. So now the question is, people are starting to get out and about. How do you get people into your business? How do you encourage them to take that next step, to enter that door, to go and look at the products? So retailers in this case really have to look at making their in-store experiences something that's a little bit more extraordinary, because it has to give somebody a reason for them to step in that door. It has to overcome those trained behaviors that you don't want to go in small closed spaces with a lot of people. These are all those learned behaviors that we all have. So how can we encourage that? So our opportunities here start from the outside. Window graphics. One survey found, talking about window graphics specifically, that 92% of shoppers are always on the lookout for a deal. So windows and shop windows specifically provide a great way to hunt for deal hunters. In the same instance, those same graphics could also tell you, yes, we're open. Yes, we have new products. So how does the brand get that first person in through the door? That's the first step. That's the hardest step. We need to make sure that that exterior of that business is something that's very, very eye-catching and very desirable to consumers. So that way they take that step in. And then once they're in, what then? Obviously, the retail graphics, POP displays, and experiential marketing. So how can we make that experience in store something that's a little bit different, something that's really special for those that are taking that time to go to those stores? And that involves more than just some kind of gimmick or some kind of sale. It really involves a holistic approach to how we're designing, or how brands are designing their in-store displays and their in-store environment. All of that is key. What are the graphics like on the walls? What are the POP displays looking like? How do the various displays around the store look, and how do they encourage people, again, to get more tactile, to actually look and take a closer look at the merchandise? One report that I'm quoting here is from Factory 360 and said 79% of companies surveyed said that an experiential marketing strategy helped increase their sales overall, whereas 44% and 74% of consumers said that they were more likely to purchase a company's product after being part of immersive marketing experience. So then the question is for, the print service providers, how can you partner with brands to help them offer this kind of immersive experience? It's a very good question. And that's only something that you can do in partnership with the customers and the brands that you're working with, by working hand in hand to see how their customers are acting, how they're interacting right now, and how to take that up another step. Sustainability is something that's also been on everybody's mind over the last few years. And interestingly enough, consumers in many cases are becoming those brand champions, and they're basing it on the ethics and a brand's commitment to environmental issues. An interesting point from Forbes magazine, it brought out that a growing consciousness about the environment paired with an intensifying desire to participate in community causes is rapidly filtering into empowered consumers' buying decisions. 68% of these plan to step up their efforts to identify brands that reduce environmental impact. They want to seek out energy efficient labels when making purchases, and they regularly buy organic products. Consumers are putting their money where their mouth is. They are looking for brands that they feel confident that are putting a focus on sustainability, and that's really the company's motto. So now you as a PSP, how can you help your brands? Again, retail graphics and POP displays are perfect because in this instance, virtual merchandising choices are a prominent way to showcase a brand's corporate values. Are you using recycled materials? What materials are you using? How are you going to market? Are you using, the inks? Are they, lower in VOCs? What kind of environmental capabilities or characteristics of the products that you're producing, how do they tie and how are they in line with what the brand's sustainability goals are? And then also you're looking at banners and soft signage and flags. That's that's one of the things in retail that's always been very, very important. Fabric offers a different tactile and a different look within a store's interior. Now, when you look at digital printing, analog printing is not exactly a green industry, but when you look at digital textile printing, that's where you see that there's a reduction in ink consumption. There's a reduction in water pollution, and there's an efficiency to that system that really lends itself to these sustainability goals. Then also fabric, because I mentioned it's a sensory marketing area. It's a way that people can get tactile or see something. So again, store windows and product displays to have that really big visual impact. It draws people in a way. You see mannequins with different clothing on them. People will go and they'll touch and feel to see what it is. How can your graphics or how can your signage, especially when you're looking at soft signage or banners and flags, how can that help in that vast, characteristic, that vast environment to bring you into this sustainability and help brands to really showcase how they are addressing this particular topic. One of the other things, this is actually the last trend that I'm going to be talking about, is personalization. Personalization is something we've heard about for a very, very long time. We've heard about it, especially in the commercial print market. You have VDP or variable data printing. So that way you are getting something that's mailed to you, that's specific to you and your interests. More and more customers, though, granted there's privacy concerns, but more and more customers are now sharing their preferences. They're sharing how they want to personalize. And many, many brands and companies are joining that idea that consumers don't want to be one in a crowd. They want to stand out. So how can these consumers stand out? Area of opportunity, retail graphics, POP displays. We can do something that's very specific, even linked to a campaign that has a QR code or some other code that brings you into the store. Vehicle graphics are a huge, huge way to be personalized. You look at some of the car shows, then they'll actually have people there customizing cars with graphics on the show floor. Years ago, it might have been done with paint, but now it's done with graphics. How can you tap into that consumer market and offer those kind of services? Interior decor is another one. A lot of people have been spending a lot of time at home over the last 2 years. They've realized that they might be living in a space that they don't like anymore. They want new wallpaper, they want new furnishings, they want new curtains, they want new everything. But they don't want just anything. They want something that's customized and personalized to their tastes, to their design style, and digital printing can give them that. It's slowly becoming and moving into mainstream. If you watch HGTV like I do, I will admit that, there is a ton of different designers, and they'll talk about, oh, we're going to do an accent wall. We've gone to the local print shop to get this design printed. Or they wanted to do a mural on a ceiling. Again, oh, just stop at your local print shop or sign shop down the street, and they can help you to get, to print exactly what you want for your house, your apartment. It just opens up opportunities because also those are high margin applications, anything dealing with the interior decor space. And apparel, of course, people want to stand out. Now, I know, we're talking mainly about sign and graphics, but the apparel market and the personalization market in apparel is huge. So the question is that something that you can add? When we're going back to diversification and convergence, is that an area where you can see that kind of growth and that kind of change and trends that we're seeing? So now I'm going to turn this right back over to Andy, and we're going to talk about some of the must-dos. So what are the things that you as a print graphic shop, a sign and graphic shop will need to do as we move forward in 2022 to make sure that you're on track to continue to grow?
Well, thank you, Denise. And let's start with what you were talking about. It's spot on. As Denise said eloquently, we're looking for every opportunity. We're diversifying within graphic and signs, and we're diversifying into apparel and commercial and functional and package printing and converting. As Denise said, we've got to know what our market is. We've got to research our market. We've got to know what really is an opportunity given my company's specific resources, capabilities, and circumstances. And this idea of opportunity evaluation is essential because making the right choices contributes to a sustainable competitive advantage. Making the wrong choices depletes resources, fragments operations, and undermines core capabilities. And there are a number of tools to help us evaluate opportunities and see what is best for our specific circumstances and resources and capabilities. To this point, should we be moving into personalized apparel? Maybe we should. But the way we decide is not by what the consensus is or how much buzz something is creating. We decide by using tools such as the Kagan Opportunity Assessment, Lean Canvas, and the Product Opportunity Evaluation Matrix. And Denise, the next slide starts to talk a bit about POEM, Product Opportunity Matrix, Evaluation Matrix. And basically, POEM forces us to create a report card for each opportunity we are considering. And it does that by forcing us to grade ourselves after answering key questions such as, do we have a solid customer base for this new product we are considering? Or are we stuck in it's creating a lot of buzz. If we build it, they will come. Is the customer base substantial? Is the market, given our specific resources, capabilities, and circumstances, worth pursuing, big enough to justify the development costs? Now, here's a big one. And Denise pointed to this when she talked about knowing what your market needs. Does this product or service we are considering, does it address an essential customer need? Or is it something that would be nice, but not necessary? There is a huge difference between the two. And then does this new product or service we are considering integrate with and enhance our core offerings? Or in fact, is it going to be a distraction? Next slide, please, Denise. And let's go to the next one. We basically, as I said, create a report card. We grade ourselves on these critical questions. We give ourselves an A or a B where we are well positioned, a D or F where we are poorly positioned, and a C where we're somewhere in the middle. And the point of this analysis is we generate a grade for the opportunity. And you know what? If we don't grade out well, we don't pursue it. It's not an opportunity for us, no matter how much buzz it's creating or how well others are doing with it. But where we grade well, we can honestly grade ourselves. And obviously this only works if we grade ourselves honestly. And cost inflation to justify pursuing something doesn't work here. It's pointless. But where we honestly grade out well, we go after it. Next slide, please, Denise. So as I said earlier, when we look at 2022, we need to be vigilant. And one thing we have to do is identify our most reliable, sensitive leading indicators. What indicators do you have that give you the best and most reliable warning about where business is headed? Forewarned is forearmed. So number one, identify your company's most reliable, sensitive business indicators. And if you don't know what they are, identify them ASAP. And then I'd like you to answer one question. I've tried to be frank that the business environment is very likely to be more challenging this year than it was last year. And we've got to watch where the economy, where inflation, where the disruptions in supply chains and labor shortages are going to go. They can have a severe impact on our business. So I'd like you to ask one question. Get together with your team and ask and honestly answer this question. What will we do better this year than we did last year? Anything. Operations, sales, marketing, the kinds of things Denise talked about, evaluating opportunities, something to do with workflow, something to do with the front office, with collections. A lot of folks in our industry are beginning to have cash flow problems. Something somewhere in your company that you are going to do better this year than you did last year. Ask that question, answer it honestly, and then act on your answer. Next slide, please, Denise. And I just like this comment a lot. I asked that question on our State of the Industry survey, and I want you to read what not Denise said, not what I said, but what one of your peers said in response to that question. In response to our question of what will you do better this year than you did last year, this gentleman, one of your peers, said, we will get back to running the business for sustained growth, investment, staff development, and long-term success. We have spent the last 2 years managing day-to-day crises. Somehow we have to look beyond the immediate challenges and get back to what we need to do to grow profitably over the long term. I think that says it perfectly. And our final slide, in line with what the gentleman was saying in his quote, is we need to be vigilant and we need to be aggressive. And every report in our State of the Industry series includes what we call must-dos, or actions we can take right now to make what's happening and what's ahead an opportunity rather than a threat. And if you look at our two most recent reports, you're going to see a whole bunch of must-dos on, number one, opportunity evaluation. Number two, on future-proofing your business thinking about where we need to be successful over the long term, future-proofing your business, preparing for the post-COVID world by, for example, maximizing your virtual selling capabilities, becoming a data-centric organization, or digitally transforming your business, and a whole bunch of must-dos on overcoming chronic labor shortages by, for example, building a more effective employer brand, crafting a compelling employer value proposition, increasing employee engagement. That's how we're going to make chronic labor shortages our opportunity and our competitors' problem. So when you get a chance, if you're a Printing United Alliance member, download the reports. They're all available at our website, printing.org. Use them to stay abreast of what's happening with the economy and what it means for our industry. And take a look at some of the must-dos. Try a couple of them. Think about how they apply to your company, because again, it's not just what's happening or what's ahead. It's what we are doing to make what's happening and what's ahead an opportunity rather than a threat. Denise?
Andy, thank you so very much. And again, like you said, we want to make sure that all of the print providers in the sign and graphic space really learn how to find those opportunities in order to grow their business. So we hope this presentation gave you some insights as to what's going on in 2022 and where some of the opportunity is and why it's an opportunity. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to either myself or Andy directly. Our information's here on this last slide. And thank you again for your time today.